versus TUP. We're looking at polar opposite sides here of the rankings. MCL, at this time, it's pretty much crunch time for them. We really need to rake in as many victories as they can if they want to maintain relevance as far as making it to the playoffs. TUP, a little bit of a cripple as far as losing their 2-star players from last term, but still, in all fairness, a lot of players have been stepping up. But checking out the standings right here, of
so
course.
far, pretty good standing here from UST, Bosu, and TUP, and just behind them are FIT, Adamson University, and MCL. And coming out of the last 4 teams here, it's definitely going to be very hard for them to catch up. But it is going to be very grueling for these teams in the middle of the pack as they want to get into that playoff spot right here. And it's going to be quite difficult for these teams. So they have to watch out and keep practicing.
You also have to take into account that DLSU, since this is going to be their first day, their first week in the LVL, there's still a lot that can change as far as ranking. Somebody could really plummet to the bottom at this point, depending on how far DLSU can climb. Can they make it, like, climb a few spots? Will they, who knows, they could even just stay towards the bottom. It really depends on how they perform going into this week.
Yeah, because DLSU, they've had all these weeks, they've observed the teams, they haven't shown any of their cards just yet, so they have a pretty big information advantage on that front, but it's going to be all about the execution they have for today, so they have to be very careful with that. As for the rest of the teams, they have to prepare for what's coming, not just from DLSU, but from the other teams playing today as well. Because, as you said, it's not just crunch time for MCL, it's for the rest of the teams too. So it's going to be very crucial the next few weeks, and including this one.
And it's interesting because for the LVL teams that aren't quite sure about how to go about their games against DLSU, what reference they do have was their LCL run. But if you're going to look at the LSU's roster right now, it's somewhat a mix of the old players like Spring and Comte and a mix of new. But let's go ahead and check out these rosters right here. So, of course, for MCL, top lane is going to be losers. For the jungle, it's going to be Suzuya. Mid lane, it's Stellar, ADC Chaser, and, of course, support drops with their coach, Eric Avenir Esquer.
Definitely small changes from the last term, but the star players that they have are still there. As for TUP, Monster Developer Game, of course, Desmond is in the top lane, Zet in the jungle, Bomb in the mid lane, Navi, the AD carry with his support. Along him is Miko. So definitely familiar names in the collegiate scene we have right here. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how this all plays out. They've had these weeks to prepare, to adapt, and they've got to bring it their all in these games.
Interesting that you mentioned the word adaptation, because if there's one team that I feel really has exemplified that word, it would definitely be TUP. Sure, they lost out on star players, but the people that did remain, such as Baam, such as Navi, these were the guys that people had many question marks about during the previous term. Like, will we ever see some form of improvement from them? But heading into this term, they really picked up the weight that both Asidia and Za lost.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because that's such a huge vacuum that those players left here. Big shoes to fill. And over the weeks, they've proven that they can actually fill that role for the team. And the further weeks are just going to be a bigger test for these players. And man, it's going to be very difficult indeed. But as you said, adaptation is the name of the game for TUP. MCL will have to match how to evolve their strategies in that manner. So it's going to be quite an interesting match, I believe.
Speaking of MCL, what's interesting about these guys is that if you're going to look at them from past history, during their LCL run, they were actually one of the more successful teams in their South Conference. But coming into the LVL, a little bit more tricky. I love these poses from both Chaser and Navi, by the way. But yeah, talking about these two right here as far as matchup, Chaser is the guy that has kind of performed quite well actually as a sub-AD carry. Meanwhile, for Navi, I feel like he's one of the breakout stars for TUP this term, was really able to fill the void as far as who could potentially keep TUP up and running as a top contender. So I feel like going into this particular game, you'll have to keep your eyes on these two ADCs.
Yeah, definitely. And Navi in that matchup is very scary. I think he has one of the highest in terms of the individual stats here as an AD carry. So it's going to be very scary here. As for MCL, they'll be banning out Morgana, Zoe, as well as the Nami. As for TUP, they don't want to deal with Rakan, Talia. Let's see what their third ban will be.
Oh man, I'm not sure if you caught this particular game, Atlas, but I feel like this Rakan ban, not particularly towards drops, but because of Stellar running it in the mid lane during the previous week. So
yeah, it's actually pretty surprising. They could bring it out, but of course, TUP denies that surprise factor. Ezreal is not going to be available for here, but MCL, they will be picking up the Kai'Sa straight away here, taking that opportunity.
Yeah,
possibly here.
Interesting with this Kai'Sa, though, is that even though she has been dominating as far as the time that she has been picked, there were these other instances where other teams have already been able to determine, like, okay, if a Kai'Sa is left open, what other options do we have to potentially counter that, despite her being at the top of the marksman ladder right now?
Yeah, like she has such high DPS once you get her evolutions, her items, but in lane, if she's left, if she can be checked early because of her lower range on most AD carries, she can get into a very difficult spot here. TUP, since they banned out the Ezreal, it's one of the options they have against Kai'Sa, so they won't have that, but they do go for the Jhin instead. We'll be seeing what their next pick will be for this one.
Interesting. So Jhin gonna be locked in for Na'Vi right there. Wondering what they'll be potentially complementing this with as far as support. Still waiting for that last pick coming in from Zed. Looks like we are seeing a hover over Sejuani, and that will be the lock-in.
Sejuani in the jungle. In 8.10, I don't think that the meta here in the LVL has caught up to the point where the 8.10 has such a huge effect on the jungle, so I do think the Sejuani pick is still acceptable. As for MCL, if they pick up the Nocturne, it's going to be quite interesting for this one. Nocturne does perform a little better than Sejuani in 8.10, but as I said, it hasn't yet caught up in the Philippines yet. As for MCL, they'll be picking up possibly Fiddlesticks here. Could be something different probably now that they've locked in the Nocturne for this one.
Yeah, and MCL bringing out the mozzarella cheese again.
Man.
So, I mean, this time around, a Nocturne and a Fiddlestick. So, considering that these two guys are mostly seen in the jungle, one of these guys is definitely going to be one of the more creative picks for MCL here. Whether or not it's going to be going to Stellar, like I mentioned, he did use the Rakan mid during the previous week. That's yet to be seen. So, interesting draft for MCL so far. A lot of ways that they could really go in hard on team fights.
As for TUP, they'll be locking in the Karma before we get into the second ban phase, where TUP bans Ornn in the top lane. But interestingly, I do think MCL is going to go for Nocturne in the jungle. It's just too disadvantageous to go for Fiddlesticks in the jungle, because you want to have control over that Skull Crab, and Fiddlesticks just doesn't have that opportunity compared to against Sejuani compared to Nocturne. So I bet that is going to go to another role here. Have a lot of that fear CC, that silence as well, and the potential for a surprise party when these team fights start. TUP bans out the Aurelia, so very top lane heavy bans here in the second rotation. As for MCL, Yasuo against TUP.
Not really surprised by these focused bans here coming on to Lucis. I mean, if there's one player that has been rather consistent and pretty good for MCL as far as keeping them relevant in the game, definitely Lucis. He had his pretty shining, shimmering, splendid moments, but along with that, probably a little bit like a magic 8-ball. You never know what you're going to get, and sometimes, as far as that, could potentially fail as well. So that's kind of Lucis. A lot more success, but definitely has his few shortcomings at the same time.
MCL, a little bit locking away that Yasuo, as I said, plus the Draven. It is going to be the Malzahar lock-in, probably for the mid lane here, and top lane is going to be the Singed for Lucis here. As for TUP, Swain probably going to go to the mid lane here, and Yorick to match the Singed. I think that's a very nice pick against the Singed.
Interesting draft here coming in from MCL. So it looks like it is going to be the Fiddlestick support for drops. So nonetheless, just the overall composition here, I'd probably favor TUP a bit more just because it's a lot more well-rounded in my opinion. MCL, they have a lot of tools to potentially go in fights. I mean, Chaser himself on a Kai'Sa has that mechanic as well, but what I'm not really a fan of is the lack of solid crowd control to complement
That's true.
that.
Like, they have the Malzahar suppression, but that can easily be cancelled as well. The fear isn't that big considering the TUP has a pretty beefy lineup here, and three of their top side champions for this one. And the Fling, it can easily be kited with the right tools, especially if he's very behind. And TUP just has a lot more well-rounded, and I think they have better matchups in lane, in fact.
Overall as well, with the creativity of the Fiddlesticks on support, I'm not as much a fan of it as the, let's say, the Rakan. So
it was a Jinx ban.
A Jinx and Draven.
So it's all a Na'Vi, and as I said, you've been saying that Na'Vi's been picking up the slack left by the previous members in TUP that left. So that's very understandable that they'd focus ban each other for this one.
Exactly. And going back to this Fiddlesticks, though, I'm not really a fan of it going up against Inajin and Karma particularly. What I do remember as far as how Fiddlesticks is effective as a support was way back during when Asian Arena was one of the pro teams, and Moraita Boy using it as a counter against Rakan was very, very effective. Going up against a Jin and Karma, probably not.
It's not the same tech that you'd expect, because it's not like Karma's going to dive in for you to just fear and then get away. As for top lane, I'm really interested in how this is going to play out, because Yorick is a very interesting champion to watch. It's a lot of versatility in terms of how he pushes lanes, pressures the lanes, and Lucis will have a pretty difficult time in matching that kind of pressure, even if he is on that very annoying Singed. As for the jungle here, they have a lot of early game pressure on the side of TUP, so they have to try and play against that. And it's very important, even though Riot has pushed jungle away from super early game pressure, they're still picking these champions in the LVL.
Oh man, but at the end of the day, for two sides here, what I'm hoping though for MCL, given that there are a few shortcomings to their composition, I feel that in order to at least make sure that this becomes effective, they have to make game time as early as the first, 10 to 15 minutes of the game. Because if they can't, then just the overall control that TUP has in team fights is just going to be massively superior over MCL's.
Yeah, there are definite moments that MCL's composition can just jump on someone. Say, if the Malzahar just gets a very good ultimate on someone, then that's the signal for the rest of the team to just jump in, pile on, and get that pick, and that puts him in a pretty advantageous situation on the follow-up team fight as well. It's going to be 5v4, and they still have pretty decent tools such as the Fiddlesticks, Fear, Silence, as well as the AoE, but if they're caught outside of that and TUP is able to play around it, then they'll just get rolled over.
Just by general history, like, as soon as you see a Malzahar, it's like, okay, I'm going to be going to QSS. If I need an additional, we could just have the support go Mikael. So I feel like at this point, MCL, not only do they need to snowball, there's somewhat on a time... somewhat sitting on a time bomb as well, wherein heading into the later parts of the game, your composition, I feel, is going to lose a lot of relevance going up against TUPs.
Yeah, not just in terms of the fights, but the pressure as well that Yorick can bring, as well as the Swain can bring in these fights, is definitely going to be very terrifying if they can't play around it in the early game and get to a good position in the middle and late game. So it is going to be quite tough for MCL, but of course they have these golden opportunities that they can take, and some moments of the game that will put them in such a favorable spot that can just probably take away the game. But as I said, it's going to be more difficult than, say, the well-rounded composition that TUP has.
And that's the thing about TUP's composition. I mean, they have so many options. If they want to go for team fights, they have a lot of power just through the Sejuani alone. If they kind of want to go their separate ways, go for pressure all across, then Yorick just an excellent split pusher without a doubt, hands down. And of course, if anything else, like disengage, you could have the Karma speed you up. There's just so many options they could work with.
Definitely, and let's see how all of that plays out here in Game 1 for today. Is going to be MCL Warlocks versus TUP Monstrum Vel for the game. Let's see how our players play out their level 1s.
Oh man, looks like TUP gonna group up here once again. Whether or not they'll succeed as far as getting a potential pickoff, looks like Drops actually gonna spot them out, will back away for now. So looks like, I'm wondering, is TUP gonna go for an aggressive invade for a steal overall, or if they're just trying to find a pickoff first off? It looks like they will back away.
It seems like they don't want to risk it too hard. It seems like MCL is split up, but TUP, they already were revealed, and MCL is having none of it.
TUP, though, looks like they will just back away for now, go back to their standard starts respectively. Same go for MCL. I mean, just on top of defense throughout. Take note, Vision was dropped through that red buff side onto MCL, though. So, with that said, that will give a lot of information to TUP just within these earlier minutes as far as what precautions they need to take in their respective lanes, who can kind of make the overextension, who needs to kind of keep their wave in check just to avoid potential early on surprises.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, but at some point the information becomes smooth once the Skull Crab actually spawns. It is spawning at the bottom side, so that's pretty much a signal for both teams. Okay, both junglers are going to stay around this side of the map because that is such a valuable resource. So it seems like that might actually be the case here, as TUP will probably have control of that bottom side.
Meanwhile, it looks like a few captain races investing this early on.
Just a little bit of trade. They do have their own ways to sustain themselves back up.
Looking at this mid lane matchup though, Stellar versus I mean, the tricky part here is that almost in terms of range, they're pretty much matched up. But wow, look at that trade-off between Marksman as well. MCL coming off on the short end here though.
Definitely, with the help of the damage here from Miko as well, coming from that Karma, it's definitely very tough to match it, and especially with how Navi on that Jhin, when he wants to trade, it's in very short bursts where he can get that 4th bullet out plus a grenade. Meanwhile, it's not really the same here for Chaser, because the way that Kai'Sa wants to fight is he wants to bring out that passive, but that takes a lot of auto attacks. So here TUP is definitely in the short-term trades at an advantage.
And that's kind of a worry here within these first few minutes until such times as we hit level 6. Because Nocturne, he isn't that potent in terms of ganks until he has his ultimate up. So what I'm expecting is that hopefully Suzuya manages to power farm his way until such time he does have his ultimate, just so that he could start relieving some of that pressure that otherwise TUP is going to be exerting within, what, these first 5 to 6 minutes.
So definitely that is going to be their goal here. Suzuya does get a Skull Crab top lane, so he has that little boost of experience and goal that he needs to reach that level 6 as fast as possible.
Meanwhile, look at Lucis though, getting a bit of a shove in here onto Decim, but nonetheless, just pretty good control overall from Decim as well. Looking at this bot lane though, MCL Chaser and drops, this is going to be a constant problem for them. Them getting pushed in by TUP every single time. So really hoping that we see some proactivity from MCL sometime.
That is manifesting in how the CS is here. It's almost 2 waves behind. Chaser having trouble, and he's the one getting pushed in. Of course, it is going to be a gank here coming from Zet onto Lucis. Lucis has the flash, but he burns it. Zet gives chase, has the permafrost, almost ready here, halfway there, but Lucis is getting a little bit faster, gets slowed by the Vision of Empire here. It seems like Bomb gets the first kill of the game.
Man, Lucis way far from comfort of his territory. Going to be going down there first blood. Good response coming in from Bomb though, by the way. And not the best start for MCL there. And
definitely not. Of course, Suzuya coming here to the bot lane. Very fast gank here. Takes out Navi in a flash. Miko has to run away as well. Very quick response here come from MCL on that top lane gank. They know they have the advantage in bot side.
I'm actually surprised by TUP right there. They had no business overextending that far into a trade against Chaser and Drops, especially if you're going to look at things. Miko way low on mono there to have even contributed anything significant in that trade. So it's really not the best timing for TUP there.
Definitely underestimating the power that Chaser can bring on that Kai'Sa if he gets that auto attack, if he gets that gank coming from Suzuya. So that is going to mitigate a little bit of the disadvantage in the bot side from Chaser, but of course that is just an assist and a little bit of experience. It might be very helpful, but most of that went to Suzuya, which will be really helpful in rushing towards that level 6.
Definitely, and that was the kind of win condition that we were talking about that will otherwise allow MCL to give them better footing in this game as we reach the later parts. But still yet to be seen though. But overall though, TUP, they really shouldn't allow Suzuya to reach that point. And
gonna try for a gank here, but it's not really gonna amount to too much. A little bit of pressure.
Still think Suzuya, okay, just gonna go back to regular farming. I mean, it's a bit of a consolation towards bot lane. Sure, was able to get that one kill,
yeah,
but it's still far from MCL reaching that point where they could be much more comfortable in this game. Because like I mentioned, this early game for MCL is very crucial for them to at least overcome TUP despite their disadvantage in composition.
Yeah, so the Suzuya definitely right there in the mid lane is setting it up so Stellar can get a pretty good back timer here. And as you said, the early game is going to be crucial, but as I said, the focus is much less on how the junglers play, but it seems like they still do pretty good in terms of ganks there because of how their laners are positioning themselves.
If you're going to notice that, I mean, even amidst Suzuya's proactivity, has been getting some pretty decent pathing himself. Looks like he's going to go for a cheeky invade onto the side of MCL. Going to try to spot out what he can take, but no camps really. Looks like we'll just drop vision instead.
Ooh, could possibly go for the red buff here, but it seems like Suzuya's already pathing his way over there. Seems like he's just naturally going over there. Let's see. Oh, he actually goes for the Raptors first, so will be missing out on this juicy red buff. That's a lot of XP and gold that he's lost just there. Zed could possibly go for a gank onto bot side. However, he's lingering around behind of this pit here. He can just get out very easily with the help of Nico.
Actually surprised. MCL not responding faster after Zed getting spotted out on that jungle side. I felt like they could have made something out of that, at least maybe. Okay, so summoners are down for Zed though. So slightly missed opportunity in my opinion, but nothing that particularly is a detriment to MCL.
So a little bit of a setback for Suzuya. As you said, he wants that level 6. So losing a buff at this point of the game where he's level 5 really hurts him in the next few minutes where he can't get the gank that he wants. He has to path all the way back to top side here. And that now he's level 6. So he's able to get that paranoia in time for a gank if he wants to. He has a few valid targets here. Ooh, it seems like Nico might be fighting it out with a bot lane of MCL. He is rooted, and Zed goes in for the gank. Navi finishes him off. It seems like Drops is gonna die, but Nico gets the shield and does not get burned to death.
Man, oh man, great timing, great rotation coming there from Baum and Zed, transitioning towards that bot lane, able to secure both Chaser and Drops. We're only just trying to contest for vision in that tri-brush.
Definitely pretty good so far from TUP. Always focusing on the side, but there's another fight coming. Suzuya is going to try Dustbreaker away, but it seems to be just not enough, as the move speed is not enough to get him away from all the CC that Baum and Zed can bring.
Oh man, this is the fear of MCL that is slowly being realized unless they can do something within these next few minutes. Like I mentioned, in order for MCL to at least maintain equal footing with TUP, they need to last out this early game, try to make something of it. If not, get a snowball, at least equal the scoreboard. Because if they fall behind, they're going to fall behind way too hard. Yeah,
they really need a gank here from Suzuya with the paranoia, as well as possibly help from Lucis here. But it seems he's still very busy trying to ward off the Yorick there in the top lane. And really have to command Bomb in the mid lane as well, as even though he's been traveling to the river a few times to give a little bit of firing support with the Vision of Empire, he's not missing a beat in terms of CS. He is pretty good. He has actually 100% kill participation right now, while still maintaining that dominance in the mid lane in terms of the CS.
You know what? Another thing that I struggle with here in the competition is not only is a bit more...
that is not where you want to be. Seems like Drops might actually have to burn his flash here. Permafrost is going to go through, and Navi takes the kill, and another freeze on the Chaser with the prison here. It seems like he has to burn the heal, but the fourth bullet here coming from Navi actually takes him out. This is going to be a 3v3 in a bot side. They go and suppress Navi and take him out, but Lucis is losing a lot of health. Miko has to split ways and gets taken down. Bomb is late to the party, but at least it's only 2 kills here for MCL.
Yeah, not bad coordination there coming in from Stellar and Suzuya, but problem there, a little bit in too late to have rendezvous with the rest of MCL. Had they been a bit earlier, that probably would have been a bigger victory for MCL, but just because of that, kind of equal overall.
Yeah, they went pretty deep to try and get those kills. However, good response here from the rest of MCL. But look at that. Denim really going on a beating here on this top side turret. This is the danger of leaving a Yorick alone for even a few minutes in the top side. His ghouls push the wave so hard, and with the Sheen, Last Rites just burns down those turrets.
Oh man, that's going to be tricky. And I think this is another thing that I'm struggling with MCL. Like I've been talking about earlier during Pick and Ban, Lucis is one of the clear, bigger players for MCL, which has allowed them some of the victories that they've seen. By putting him on a cinch particularly in this game, you kind of lose out on that firepower, that advantage that you naturally have if you are MCL. So at this point, it's really up to Suzuya, Stellar, Chaser to make something out of this, at least, despite Lucis falling onto a cinch. Not really as much of a pow as the other carries that they have here.
Definitely. And look at this. Desm still summoning those ghouls. Gonna make it so hard for Lucis to make a decision. Right now, he doesn't have his teleport right now, but once he does, it's gonna be such a difficult decision on whether he needs to respond to another lane, because if he leaves, Desm can just, well, decimate these turrets in top side.
Meanwhile, again, constant shoves coming in from both Navi and Nico here in the spot lane. The question is just how long can Chaser and Drops...
They're going to try and go for another dive here. because it seems like Bomb is rotating downwards, but a few pings here and there, they have to call it off. It's way too risky at this point, possibly. Decim gonna fight it out with Lucis here. He's taking quite a bit of damage from the Maid of the Mist. He is gonna flay him backwards, and Decim is pushed back.
Had a bit of a struggle there for Lucis.
Oh man, it is going to be Zed. Ooh, he does not go over with a blast cone, but does escape with the Arctic Assault.
Oh man, meanwhile, Lucis gonna have to run to the turret, getting chased by some ghouls there from Decim. A bit of a struggle though, Lucis. Tries to go for these kills, but has been falling a tad bit short. TUP gonna be going for their first dragon of the game. Stop 3.
Pretty much uncontested here.
Whew. Looks like we are gonna be seeing a round 2 potentially from TUP.
They still have their ultimates here. They are going to 4-man gank this bottom lane, and drops. And it seems like Chaser is going to die as well, but oh no, Suzuya dives in the middle of all of them, gets 1 kill onto Miko. However, he's now behind enemy lines, getting beaten down with Bomb, and the Demonic Ascension just burns him down.
Oh man, 3 for 2. Still in favor of TUP. Again, a little bit into late for Suzuya, but overall, it could be Navi getting a full shoving onto this turret here.
Is this going to be possibly first serve of the game here? And this is just so hard for MCL. They're being pressured topside by Decim as well as Navi. Oh, actually, no, not first serve is already taken, but still. There's just so much pressure here, and look at that.
Yeah, I love the timing coming in from TUP. As soon as they saw Chaser and Drops make that small bit of an overextension, that was game time for them. Beautiful collapse, great lockdown onto both Drops and Chaser. Suzuya was able to at least salvage this fight a bit by going for 2 targets, but at the end of the day, it was a 2 for 3, not to mention a lost turret here in that bot lane. So I'd still say that even with a turret take towards top side, this overall, going to TUP, I'd say.
Definitely, they get a pretty good shot on the bot side as well. Not quite enough to get the turret, but that's still so difficult. I actually don't know why Chaser and Drops were even extending a little bit, because they knew that Dragon just fell down.
Exactly.
And that's possibly a jungler and a mid lane on that Dragon side. So extending even a little bit is a death sentence pretty much.
Man, bot lane definitely not looking good for MCL right now. In fact, probably the ones that are struggling the most amidst, look at everyone else though. Stellar, Suzuya, pretty much respectable KDAs with where they're at. But then again, if you're going to look at where the rest of TUP is, then that's going to be your struggle right there.
Definitely. And look at it against bot lane. It's pretty spicy. Navi 6-2-1. Pretty good CS lead over Chaser, and he has all that turret gold.
Man, Fiddlesticks this behind, it's gonna lose a lot of relevance, a lot of pow to your team fights. Sure, he has some pretty okay crowd control that he can contribute.
Zet just goes in. Stellar has to flash away, has to cleanse that as well, suppresses Zet, but it seems like Suzuya once again diving between so many members of TUP, but he gets out of that jam real quick.
Yeah, Suzuya, even with the ooh, Rufus forced to flash away. This is a detriment to MCL right here. And like as I was mentioning, with Suzuya and Stellar, the only carries that are kind of up and running for MCL right now was everybody else trying to play catch-up. You lose out on a lot of your potential firepower, a lot of your spark during team fight. Sure, Suzuya can just dive in, but after that, probably take what, the target
Oh
or
man,
two.
they're just going back and forth between objectives here. Decim still wailing on the top side, still has the Maiden up actually. So it's going to be very hard for Lucis to actually fight him anywhere. That is going to be the Procession blocking his escape, and Lucis gets taken down. Decim still has a lot of health, and he's still sticking around possibly to help Bond here as the rest of their team gets Rift Herald.
Rift Herald take, and TUP, just more pressure here towards the upper side of the map. MCL, they are kind of restrained to a more responsive position at this point, aren't they?
Definitely, and that's not something you want to be. And if you're running a composition that has Nocturne and Malzahar and Kaisa, because being in that position where on the back foot and you can't pull the trigger as easily as if you're ahead, that's such a huge detriment to a composition like this. They want to be able to go in and deal so much damage with their dives, but in this situation, TUP can just repel them.
And the tricky part here is that if you want to look for opportunities where an MCL can potentially mount that comeback, sure, you could look for pickoffs, but in order to do that, of course, first off, you want to make sure you have proper control over this map, just so that you could scout off potential isolated members of TUP. But if you're going to look at overall control as far as what's happening right now, I'd say it's probably shining a little bit more towards TUP in terms of what brightness I see in vision.
I do think a little bit is an understatement. They've had all outer turrets taken down. They've had the first Drake of the game as well as the Rift Herald. They have a 6,000 gold lead here. And they're such in a good position that Deckham can constantly harass Lucis. Lucis cannot match the push that he brings to the table and whatever side lane he's pushing. So this puts MCL in a situation where they can't just leave their side laner, their top laner, just mucking around trying to face Deckham. And right here, TUP gonna set up for another gank here. Lucis is very, very fast, but he is gonna get permafrosted if he gets another hit in. But seems like they will just focus onto this boss side turret. That is going to be the banner of command to try and defend against this. But it's still going to be very, very difficult for MCL to respond to this.
And you have to... Oh
man, it is going to be big trouble here. That is going to be Lucis going to take it down. Suzuya tries to dive in. He deals so much damage, actually. But it's still going to be the rest of TUP trying and fight back. Bomb is still full health. Deckham decides to just go for the turret here. Bomb might actually go for the flash in with a demonic ascension. Takes down the support here. Drops down. And that is going to be a 2 for 2 in the end, plus a turret for TUP.
Man, the power of TUP Siege right now, the Yorick plus a full-on squad, that's just way ahead in comparison to MCL right now. Is proving to be such a massive detriment.
Oh man, Bomb, a little bit of trouble suppressed here by the Nethergrass, could be taken down. He is quite beefy, just recovering a little bit of health from his passive, but it's not enough. But it's still going to be a tough defense here for MCL, but they successfully ward off TUP.
Yeah, but for how long exactly? Look at the value that TUP is getting out of this. In all fairness, though, what I will commend MCL on is the goal difference. It's not as big as I would have expected. I was expecting probably around the 7 to 8K mark, but then again, it's still a manageable goal difference. Let's go ahead and see what transpired here, though. So it looks like a full-on commit on to going for Lucis here. Look at Chaser, just able to hit from the backside. Suzuya tries to go in for a dive in. Actually, does manage to get a pick off there. We'll see everyone else trying to go for Lucis, looking very low, being the much more sensible target, but instantly realizing that Suzuya was in the middle of that. They turned to him, managed to get that takedown, and just look at that damage coming in from Bomb at that point. Just easily able to take down the drop. And I think that's a disadvantage when you're running a Fiddlestick support, especially falling that behind. You're just so squishy that even with the kit that you have, you don't even last long enough to maximize it.
However, that was a pretty good fight, all things considered, for MCL. If they were in a position where they weren't as behind, they would have wrecked TUP there, because TUP just committed so hard onto Lucis that they left Suzuya alone. They left Drops alone, even though he is terribly behind on that Fiddlesticks. The base damage and the chip damage that is brought by that surprise party that he has from his ultimate is definitely going to rack up, especially if you leave Suzuya and Chaser freely damaging the rest of TUP. But it seems like they will be pulling the trigger on the Rift Herald here. Deckham, you just get out of that really, really quickly. Let's see, this is going to be the configuration here. Members on all sides. Bomb actually takes out Suzuya here. That seems like a big defense here. 4 members in the bot lane from MCL. But look at the rest of the map.
Exactly. This is what I've been talking about as far as TUP with the well-rounded composition that they have. They have so many options, and the option that they have decided to go for it now is this constant pressure, sieges across the lane that MCL has to choose where they respond. Yeah, so that's a lot of damage.
Oh, Drop's going to try to go in, actually, trying to go for a bomb, but he's a very beefy mage here, and that is going to signal the rest of TUP to respond and turn. And getting 2 kills and a turret on top of that, that is just huge advantage. Meanwhile, on the bot side, Deckham and his waifu here, the Maiden of the Mist, still going for that. Tons of damage. Demolisher is still up here, cannot get the prop, but that is so much pressure.
Man, this is just a dream siege for TUP right now. And look at this, actually able to get an inhibitor in this mid lane. Looks like they could actually go for more here should they wish. And looks like in terms of more, they're going for inhibitor towards bottom.
And this goes straight for the inhibitor, but actually no, going straight for Drops and the rest of the members of MCL. A little bit of damage right here and there, but they do get their prime target. Suzuya Na'Vi gets taken down. I think TUP might have overstayed their welcome here as MCL respawns. They're running away. The shield's barely keeping alive. Zet gets taken down. Bomb in the front of everything. He can try and fight back, but he doesn't have Demonic Ascension right now. He gets taken down by Chaser, and TUP scatters.
Yes, TUP will suffer 3 casualties, but then again, I'd say that at most was definitely worth. I mean, taking down 2 inhibitors, that in itself, sure, we're at a point where Baron is up. Can MCL even take it right now, though? No,
definitely
they have
not.
to deal with all this
Suzuya is
pressure.
not up here. Chaser, I don't think he's at a point where he can deal so much damage to make Baron so quick that TUP cannot respond. But all things considered, that was worth it for TUP, but it was still very sloppy. They went for the kill instead of the inhibitor, or even just retreating, even though they knew that MCL was respawning within the span of 10 or 5 seconds.
Man.
So that was definitely a mistake by them, and they pay for it with like 3 of their members.
Looks like MCL, they are starting to make the proactive move, though, to at least establish control over this Baron side. But the tricky part is, if it does come to a point where they have to contest it, they're not quite in a position to do so. Let's go ahead and see what happened here. So TUP immediately turning to go for more pickups here in the bot lane. So they were a tad bit divided here, going for targets first. But then again, as soon as the rest of MCL come back online, Inhibitor was pretty much a non-factor. TUP just had to turn around at this point. Still actually managing to land those kills for a few more decent kills. Looks like at this point, though, with that fling in, the rest of TUP just had to scatter.
Yeah, definitely. And they could have, I believe they could have just finished off the inhibitor. Well, look at this. TUP making the play here. 3-man Baron while the 2 other members try and pressure, shove the waves in. They do have the teleport from Decim, so if ever MCL wants to try anything funny, they can have that teleport.
Oh man, but even if they do,
It's pretty slow though.
Yeah, pretty slow.
They do have the Jin, so it's not as fast as they'd want it to be.
Ooh.
But it doesn't seem like MCL is in that position to actually respond. They just go for the easy kill on Decim, but they do lose the Baron, and that's still 4 members with that very valuable buff.
MCL, they just had to go for that lesser evil. We couldn't really, not really in a position to contest Baron.
Definitely
especially
not.
with where they're at. Just go for Decim instead. But then again, as far as how they're going to be dealing with a Baron-empowered TUP, that's still a big question.
Yeah, because TUP had complete control over that area. Control wards very deep. So now Na'Vi and the rest of TUP rallying with this Baron buff to just take down these turrets.
Ooh.
Just slowly but surely. They already have 1 inhibitor down. They have a lot of pressure coming from that lane. It's just unfortunate for them that they weren't able to finish off that bot lane inhibitor with Decim on at Yorick. I think they could have really had a chance to take that down quickly and then get out before MCL had a chance. But unfortunately for them, MCL was able to turn around that fight.
In all fairness, though, for TUP, I guess, if ever Decim was towards a Baron, then MCL, either they deal with the pressure coming in from lanes or just go full-on contest 5. So maybe TUP going for the safer route, having Decim as a precautionary distraction in the bot lane, being that lesser evil, just so that TUP has much more assurance over Barons, as opposed to risking a potential steal from Suzuya.
Possibly. But here, look at that. All this Dragon control coming from TUP. MCL didn't really have a chance to contest any of these Drakes at all because of how much pressure TUP had and how ahead Na'Vi was in the bot side earlier. So now that they have taken over pretty much the entire map outside of MCL's base here, they get this 3rd Dragon free.
Oh man, and with that bonus regen, this just gives a lot more staying power for TUP as far as when they go for these sieges. And I'm not even sure how long MCL is going to last this at this point, with an Baron-empowered minion wave pushing in on to them across lanes.
Yeah, this is going to crash onto this inhibitor, and I don't think Lucis can keep up with the waves. It's going to be very tough for their defense. MCL really needs to step it up here. If they want to pull the trigger, they have to do it soon. But look at that, huge wave topside. That is going to be tough to defend. Already taking down that turret, already breaking it down. So Zuya pulls the trigger onto Na'Vi there, but seems like he has a lot of shields in his way. Zet and Bomb trying to go for the front line here, dealing lots of damage, but they're taking a lot of damage themselves. Takes down Inhibitor, but of course Chaser gets bursted down so much by Na'Vi. Goes in for Stellar, takes him down, drops is the next target, gets feared away, but Miko finishes off the kill here. Oh man, sniped down by Navi, and this is actually game as these two demolishers just tear down these turrets. And next, on to the Nexus as MCL. They were not able to keep up with TUP as they take their first victory today.
Very well played by TUP right there. Just a dominating performance. But then again, like I mentioned, it's not just how both teams performed on the Rift. My problems just ultimately go back to as early as drafting. I wasn't much of a fan of MCL's draft. I felt like there was a massive imbalance, which is why, like I mentioned, they had to make things of their early game. If not, if TUP dominates, then it's just a hard way to come back from there. And I think it was very evident during that late part, that last clash. Sure, the Nocturne was able to dive in, but the follow-up wasn't quite there anymore because everybody was so behind.
Yeah, definitely. It's really that disadvantage you have in terms of compositions like that. They were pretty much going for, okay, maybe let's pick off one member or maybe get that huge pick on the backline during a team fight and then just crush them from there. It just never happened for them because, as you said, they were all pretty much behind, and that's really how TUP was playing, was they were always aggressive. Whenever they found a dive, they go for it because they know that they can't have Chaser getting ahead, getting his evolutions and his items up. Otherwise, he'll be a huge threat. And just topside, I don't like the matchup at all. And I just don't understand how MCL drafted like that.
Completely agree with you. And overall, you have to take note. Going into Game 2, we're going to be seeing MCL again. So as far as corrections that have to be made, of course, the very obvious being the draft. Number 2, if they're going to be rolling with loses, I feel like this is a point where, and since it's very crucial for MCL to rake up every single victory that they can, just put these guys on comfort picks that you know that they perform on.
Because that's really going to be the focus for that team. They definitely have to go for things that they're comfortable with, and it didn't seem like they were really in their comfort zone. Suzuya was doing pretty decent in these dives, but it's not to the same effectivity that one would see in someone that's like fully coordinated.
Overall, though, just very well played by TUP, and I gotta say, from what we saw there, it's just what we've been talking about constantly, wherein we're seeing massive step-ups from the people that remain from TUP. And I also got to commend the improvement, by the way, coming in from both Tekim and Zet, because during the earlier weeks to their start in the LVL, they were looking very shaky. There were still a lot of questions whether they could live up to the people whose spots they're filling in for. And week per week, I'm definitely seeing that improvement, that overall, TUP looking like a contender slowly but surely.
Definitely. So, of course, man, that was quite an interesting first game. We have a lot more games here, but of course, we'll be seeing you after a short break. I am Atlas. With me was Arctic, and we'll be seeing you with the 2018 LVL Spring Term after a short break. Actually have to burn his flashy. Permafrost is going to go through, and Navi takes the kill, and another freeze on the Chaser with the prison here. It seems like he has to burn the heal, but the force will press Navi and take him out, but Lucis is losing a lot of health. Miko has to split ways and gets taken down. Bomb is late to the bottom lane and drops. And it seems like Chaser is going to die as well, but oh no, Suzuya dives in the middle of all of them, gets one kill onto Miko. However, he's now behind enemy lines, getting beaten down with Bomb, and the Demonic Ascension just burns him down. A little bit trouble suppressed here by the Nethergrass, could be taken down. He is quite beefy, just recovering a little bit of health from his passive, but it's not enough. But it's still going to be a tough defense here for MCL, but they successfully ward off going straight for drops, and the rest of the members of MCL. A little bit of damage right here and there, but they do get their prime target, Suzuya. Navi gets taken down. I think TUP might have overstayed their welcome here as MCL respawns. They're running away. The shield's barely keeping alive. Zet gets taken down. Bomb in the front of everything. He can try to fight back, but he doesn't have Demonic Ascension right now. He gets taken down by Chaser. On to Navi there, but seems like he has a lot of shields in his way. Zet and Bomb trying to go for the front line here, dealing lots of damage, but they're taking a lot of damage themselves. Takes down Inhibitor, but of course Chaser gets bursted down so much by Navi. Goes in for Stellar, takes him down, drops is the next target, gets feared away, but Miko finishes off the kill here. Oh man, sniped down by Navi, and this is actually game as these two demolishers just tear down these turrets. And next, on to the Nexus as MCL. They were not able to keep up with TUP as they take their first victory today.
Very well